Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the All You Can Board podcast. I am Dylan. Who's going to go
I'm
Carlo.
And I'm Carlo.
We are Dylan, Carlo, and Braden, and today's main course is going to be the cycles of a hype. So every popular entertainment medium, whether it be like film, television, books, and even board games, goes through what I have kind of dubbed here as the cycles of hype. We're going to get into a little bit more and discuss what that is, but you can kind of think of them as sort of like fads, things that you see take off, and then you see everyone sort of follow suit and jump on it because they realize that people are interested in it. So we're going to be talking about that and breaking down 5 specific cycles of hype that we think the board games have gone through while we've been into the hobby, as well as like the highs and lows of each one, some of the games that we want to like sort of talk about, and maybe things that we agree or disagree about each of those specifics. And then we're also going to get into some ones that didn't make the top 5 list that we each think could like we could argue are as influential or as popular as the ones we do talk about. But before all of that, we have our appetizer. And I don't even know what the appetizer is really, because Carlo's brought a mysterious appetizer. So I'm going to throw it over to Carlo.
All right, so it's mysterious for reasons that obviously I explained to you guys a little bit in advance, but this has to do with part of your birthday gift here, Dylan, and it also is linked to something that we talked about. I mean, it's come up in conversation a few times in the past year or two, but it's something that the three of us actually talked about when we were in Hamilton for the Canada Plays trade show. And so I'm just going to show you, and I apologize for how late this is, but and you'll get the other part next time I see you. It's been a little while, obviously, but this is one part of your birthday gift. For those listeners at home, I'll just read it out, obviously. But it's a book called The Kobold Guide to Board Game Design.
I'm already super, super intrigued.
Okay. So I'm going to end up asking you guys a bunch of questions and stuff, but I'll start by giving you a quick pitch about the book and why I got this, okay? So, you know, I've pondered a little bit. I won't get into my own stuff now. I'll save that for afterwards. But like pondered game design a little bit, only more so in like the past couple of years. And for the longest time, we never really like brought it up with each other. And then like you kind of brought it up a couple times, and especially in Hamilton, you kind of told us about a game design idea that you had. And you started like talking about, oh, what would I even do? Like, how would I even design this? Where would I even start, kind of thing. And one of the podcasts I've listened to most, and especially dug through a lot of the backlog over the past year or two, has been Ludology, which was initially started by Jeff Engelstein and Ryan Sturm. And since then, you know, they've changed co-hosts over time. But so anyway, on one of the episodes, probably somewhere around episode 150, Jeff Engelstein, so you guys probably recognize the name. He's a published game designer. He has, like, I would say maybe 8 to 12, somewhere in that range, like published game designs, maybe even more at this point. I don't know. I think he only published his first game when he was like in his late 40s. I think he's like some type of like science engineer or something, like, you know, brilliant guy. And both of his kids are published game designers as well, Brian and Sydney Engelstein. And so on one of his episodes, and he teaches game design courses, or at least used to when this episode was recorded that I was listening to, and he mentioned that in his game design program, the main book that he assigns to his students is this book. And he said it's just like an excellent guide. And so the lead, I'm going to open up the book for a second and read something out of here, because it lists like the lead author as Mike Selinker, who is one of the co-designers of Lords of Vegas, and he also runs Lone Shark Games publishing company, and he's created all kinds of like puzzle books and stuff. Super interesting guy to listen to. Like, he's been on the show a couple times being interviewed. So he's the lead author and editor, and then it's a collection of essays from a bunch of other game designers, including Rob Daviau, obviously like responsible for all the legacy games and stuff, James Ernest, Matt Forbeck, Richard Garfield, Dave Howell, Steve Jackson, Richard C. Levy, Andrew Looney, Michelle Nephew, Paul Peterson, Lisa Steenson, Jeff Tidball, Teowin Woodruff, and Dale Yu. So there's a collection of all these essays on all kinds of different topics, and it's basically assigned in a game design course by someone who I respect a lot and has been pretty influential on me just in terms of what I've learned about board games from listening to podcasts and stuff. And yeah, he's written books. Like he and a guy named Isaac Shalev like wrote a book about game design or like game mechanics or mechanisms, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember. I think it's actually called Mechanics. And I mentioned this to someone who corrected me on using it instead of mechanisms once, but that's neither here nor there. But it always finds a way to sneak its way in, doesn't it? So yeah, at this point, I think this is a no pressure at all. This isn't like a, hey, now I expect you to read this and start designing a game. But I got 2 copies. Braden, it's not your birthday yet, and I also have never heard you mention being interested in game design, but this is where I want to have this kind of brief conversation here. So I want to ask you guys, how serious, and maybe we'll start with you, Dylan, since I did get this as a gift for you, and it was so recently your birthday. Like, where do you stand on wanting to design a game? Like, whether that's short-term, long-term, is it a real goal? Is it something that like, where are you at with that?
Yeah, I'm going to be careful what I say here, and this is only because like it's one of those things where like I want to say the idea that I have and like what I'm excited about, but I also don't want someone else to just go like make that game or whatever. Not that like I'm saying anyone listening to our podcast is even go take that idea, but yeah, like I'm pretty much at the same place that I was when I talked to you guys, which is like I never for the longest time ever considered or thought I'd be interested in designing a game, mostly because it just sounded like I'd have to dig into how to design a game that is engaging and fun, and like the amount of play testing that would go into it. I've heard it can be like absurd for certain games to make sure that like, especially if you want them to be balanced and sort of like not have any issues that people are encountering after they start playing it. But at the same time, there's games that like I wish existed or that like I want to play, that it's like it's almost like when we've talked in the past about I think when we did our last talk at one of the schools here locally in Winnipeg to do with board games, we said like a piece of advice is like when you're making YouTube videos is make the videos that you want to watch. Like if you find yourself going to search for stuff to watch and you're like, oh, no one's making that, like, and you're already interested, like you can make the things that there's those gaps for, and like now you are creating the things you couldn't find, and then there's likely other people looking for them as well. And I guess that's like where I kind of like start to have a bit more of an interest, is like, again, being a little bit, without getting into details, it's like there's a specific type of legacy or campaign game, or I think it's more so a campaign game that like I want to exist, that doesn't take 3 hours to play, that is flexible in how long it takes to play, that can be played solo or is maybe strongest solo, that has very little setup time, so that you don't have to think like, oh, I want to play this, but I got to go set it up for 45 minutes. I want to be able to get into it as easy or close to as easy as like me sitting down to boot up Elden Ring or something like that, right? So I think that's where I started to get interested in it again, where I was like, if I could get to a place where I have a bunch of downtime that I actually want to and can convince myself to put into just sort of like chipping away at like even just writing notes or whatever, maybe I could like get to a point where I think of an idea that sort of is that snowball effect, where that gets me so excited, or I'm like, oh wait, that actually works, and then suddenly it's just like, and then now I can't stop. Like I've been in that phase to do with other things in my life, where all it takes is sort of like that tipping point of something that like really excites you to all of a sudden you go all in with it. I feel like our channel is in many ways that, or at least my half of it. It felt like that. It got to a point where I'm like, this just feels right. So yeah, I'd say that's where I am. Like I don't know when it'll be. I don't know if it'll be. I mean, now that I'm getting more encouragement and I have a book to read that'll actually like it helped me probably fill in a lot of the gaps and questions that I have to do with where I even begin. Who knows, maybe that'll expedite things, but it's something I definitely want to explore. And whether or not it turns into a game that I'm actually trying to get produced or something, who's to say, but at least to explore it, I think would be worth it.
Let me add to this too. So it's really funny that you bring this up, Carlo, because recently, I've actually started to get into the podcast called Fun Problems. Have either of you heard of this podcast?
Is that the one with Peter C. Hayward and someone else? Okay, so I've started.
Brandon.
Yes, okay, I've followed it, so it stays on my Spotify, but I haven't actually had the time to listen to it yet. But tell me about it.
I'm about 17 episodes in, and I think the podcast is ending or has ended. Is about to, and they talk about designing board games. They talk about the design process, and they really try to go down at a maybe not a microscopic level, but looking at things like how are games, how do they start out, right? Are they moment first design? Are they mechanics first? Are they about the components first, right? Or is it art or theme, whatever first, right? And like what it takes, what the downsides, what the upsides are for designing in that way too. So it's, designing a game. I don't know if I'm really serious about it right now, at least. But what I do find interesting is just the thought process behind it and like kind of where to start. And they do give recommendations of places to start with designing games, which I think is super, super helpful too. And yeah, like I'm still going through their stuff. They're talking about hooks in this latest episode that I'm listening right now too, and like the different types of hooks, and talking about tactility in games and really trying to explore all the different things that make game design interesting, even down to like what a game is called, right, and like how it evokes that feeling as well. So yeah, it's been very, very interesting to listen to too. So yeah, I'm curious to see what the book says as well, though.
Yeah, well, especially because it's coming from so many different people. I just think, that collection of essays is something that really, really intrigues me. So I'm looking forward to reading it as well. So let me ask you guys a couple other questions here. Would you, just off the top of your head, if you were to publish, do you think you'd lean more towards self-publishing? Like whether that's, doesn't necessarily mean it would have to be the crowdfunding route. I'm not saying start your own publishing company, but whatever that means, or would you lean more towards like pitching to an existing publisher and hoping they would just publish your game?
I doubt I would self-publish only because of the stress that I could imagine is involved with, or like logistically all the other things that I have to then consider. Like it would be enough, I think, to even like to get me to the point where I've done all the work to design a game, or I feel like I have something worth showing, but then to have to figure out all the other side of it and how to publish it and like getting it produced and all that kind of stuff, I feel like would just be too overwhelming for me. I know myself as a person, and I feel like I'd have to like limit that amount of overwhelm. So I think it would be more likely that I would try to almost like form a relationship with a publisher or someone we already do have a relationship with, and like even if they're not the ones that end up publishing it, like get them to like look at it and give advice, and if they're not, and then see if they're interested or if there's someone else that they can refer to sort of like take it the other part of the way, to be like, now this is not out of my hands, but like the next part of this is like primarily in someone else's hands with my input or oversight or whatever it is. But
yeah, it would be 100% pitching for me too. There'd be no way, especially in my current circumstance with my daughter being 1.5 years, there's just no freaking way that I'd be able to do a self-publish. But I think there are certainly avenues for people that we could talk to about here, even just in Winnipeg too. But yeah, I think it would be for sure trying to pitch an idea, because I feel like if they are interested in my idea, one, man, that's encouraging. And two, they're going to be able to do such a much better job with my idea and helping it become this hopefully incredible product in the end game too.
Yeah, I agree entirely with you guys about the pitching aspect. Like I wouldn't want to have any involvement in like trying to contact manufacturers and figure out shipping and all that kind of stuff. Like, and especially the way I think of it is like if you're trying to be good at something, like if you're a designer, you're not going to also try to like do every other aspect necessarily. Like I mean, depends how much like free time you think you have for these kinds of things, but if your time is limited, you sort of have to pick a lane rather than trying to get everything done. Otherwise, like every area will suffer a little bit, right? And so going back to what you said, Braden, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, the mechanics first or theme first. Like I often hear that as a question, like, do you design the mechanics first or theme first, like in interviews a lot of times. And I think another one is like kind of what you said, like for a moment, or like I think you referred to it as being designed for a moment. I've heard it as, do you design for the experience? like, hey, I want that type of experience where, you know, everyone leaves kind of like feeling like they kind of butted elbows with their neighbors, like everyone was kind of like in each other's faces a little bit, but it's still, you know, and like there's a lot of socializing, there's a lot of negotiating through the game. Like you can kind of come up with the idea of an experience without having the idea of like an actual hook or any like mechanisms in place, right?
Yeah, and that's something that both AJ and Peter talk about is like when you are going and setting out to design a game, you should set out for that moment, right? Do you want to design a game where people have to lie to each other and there's this huge reveal at the end? Okay, you're going to probably go down the social deduction route. Or are you going to find a way for different mechanisms to get you there at the end, right? So having that goal in mind, honestly, it's the same with teaching, right? It's like, what skills do I want my students to have at the end of it? And how do I get them there, right? So first I have to define what that goal is, and then I use the steps to get there. It's going to be the same, I think, with game design as well. What is that moment or feeling that you want to have? Is it a party game? Is it camaraderie? And then using the different tools that you have to design that kind of curated experience.
Yeah, which is like, I would say that what got me excited in the first place about even like potentially design something, even though I hadn't been thinking about it ever before that, was the feeling that I get. I'll use Elden Ring as an example, but the feeling you get where like for me, like I can be playing that game for an hour, for 2 hours, and I'm already excited about restarting at the beginning because I want to try things differently, or I want to like try a different build, or I want to like, okay, what happens if I did this first or whatever, or what happens if I went this way? And I almost want that experience of like, I'm already excited to start playing it again, even though I've only just started playing it, because of all the possibilities that I can already see. It's like, how can one put that into a tabletop game and yet not have it be a huge gigantic box that takes forever to set up and tear down? That's kind of like, that's what I wanted to exist in that moment. I was like, I want to play Elden Ring, but I don't want to be on a screen anymore. But I don't want to go set up Oathsworn to play solo right now. Like, where is the experience for me?
Right. So then you guys think you would both start from the experience rather than mechanics or theme?
I think so. I mean, there'd be at least maybe not starting with experience first, but there would be maybe a moment that I would have as kind of like a guiding principle for like going with a mechanic or something like that. Like trying to figure out, you know, I have thought about like trying to take Colorado in some way, but then also applying it now to I don't even know that, but that's like been my first instinct is like, I love the way like you're building different, what are they called? Hops?
I don't think that's what it says in the rule book.
I think that's what BGB calls them, Board Game Barrage. But then using that in a different way.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Triqueta or whatever, which is Stefan Dora and I think Ralph Zur-Lind, uses that.
Dang.
You gotta play it. Yeah.
Dang. Someone's on it already.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's slightly different, but it does sound very interesting. We got to play it, but
I mean,
not to say that you
absolutely
can't use it again. I mean, it's a brilliant like that. Yeah, it doesn't mean that with 2 games out there you're off limits.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I would have that kind of moment, or trying to be clever, but then thinking about like what are those things that I can use that already exist, because that's one of the things that they talk about is that AJ and Peter talk about is, especially when you're designing some of your first games, stop trying to be like super clever where you're inventing a mechanic or a mechanism that no one has come up with before. Try and use something that is already been established and then adapt it, maybe change a little bit of it so that people are still familiar with it, but get something new out of it as well.
Yeah, I would probably start small too, with like small games that have like not a ton of rules, not a lot of components. I mean, I think in general that's what I would lean towards designing, But there might be a day where I'd get the temptation to try designing, like, if I started to become a somewhat accomplished designer one day, like, I could see myself being tempted to design something more like an Uwe Rosenberg midweight worker placement kind of thing. But I think I would need to feel like I was already an accomplished designer before I would move up to something that I would consider a medium weight game. Like, I think I'd be starting at those kind of like the Knizia range and Stefan Dora, kind of like the between light and medium, the kind of like 2.0 complexity range on BGG. The idea of the playtesting, just going back real quick to what you brought up before, Dylan, like that's one of the things that is the biggest, like one of the biggest deterrents for me, is like it's a lot of time to spend that, playtesting, even when you get results that are good for the process, they can be really discouraging, or they can suddenly be like, well, I've just created a whole bunch of more work. It might be good work that might lead to a better game, but like there's just so many unknowns, and it is a lot of time spent like analyzing data and stuff. Like there's certain aspects I would like, but I just worry about the idea of like being able to let go when a game you don't feel it's quite perfect yet, right? Like, is it fully balanced? Could I put 3 more cards in this, 100 card deck or whatever? Like, is there, is the cost on this card right? Like, there's so many things you can ask yourself and do endless play testing. And I also wanted to touch on what you mentioned about games that you wish existed, and that is 100% the way, so I've had ideas pop into my head over the past few years. I would say most of them have been over the past year or two, and I probably have somewhere between 10 and maybe 15 at most, little, like, some of them might be a sentence or two, some of them might be a few paragraphs worth of ideas, whether it's just like a hook, like a basic concept. Some of them might have like 2 or 3 mechanisms or a starting point kind of thing. And I've never sat down intentionally thinking like, okay, I'm going to set aside an hour to work on game design now. Like, I've never done that, but I just find my brain going more and more, like, every once in a while, something pops into my head and go like, whoa, that'd be cool for a game. And I think like, why is this popping into my head now suddenly? Maybe it's just because I'm listening to all these episodes of Ludology, which is about game design a lot of the time. And so, yeah, I've got all these little starting points, and I'm feeling like I'm not going to compare myself to Knizia in any way in terms of designer, but just in the style he mentions with the drawers, where he has like every drawer has its own like whatever, a bunch of sheets of paper and notebook, whatever it is, components, where he's like designing. That's kind of how I feel I might do it one day, is like, I don't know if I'm going to just sit and design one game start to finish, or if it's going to be like, I had these ideas, don't know where else to go with this for now, set it aside, maybe come back to it another time. But yeah, it's interesting to hear where you guys are at, because I think the only way I would maybe take the initiative to actually start designing would be something like, doing it alongside someone I know, and hopefully reading a book like this will give us a push to get started maybe one day. Whether that's
100%,
soon, or whether that's 5 years from now or whatever. But like I said, we're in our late 30s. Jeff Engelstein, like I said, has first published game design at age 47, and the guy has like 10 published games now. So
that'll be our 40s project, sometime in the 40s.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great appetizer. It was worth the mystery and me not being certain whether I was going to be able to contribute. This is a great one. I love it.
Thanks, yeah. Sorry to have blindsided. Yeah, well, actually, no, I shouldn't apologize. For the listeners, I asked these guys if they want to be blindsided, because I wanted the gift to be a surprise. So thanks for humoring me and being put on the spot about your game design ambitions. And now it's on record forever.
And with that, we are going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to dig into our main course.
All You Can Board is proudly sponsored by Victory Pints, our local game store of choice here in Winnipeg, Canada. We strongly believe that Victory Pints is the gold standard of board game stores, not just here in Winnipeg. Their main priority is having a wide selection of games, many of which you won't find elsewhere. They ship Canada-wide, $15 flat rate, or free shipping for orders over $200, and even take requests to try and order in specific games. They also have a used game section where you can trade in games for store credit, and maybe even find some hidden gems that others have traded in. Note that the used game section is only available for in-person purchases and trades. Again, located in Winnipeg at the corner of Henderson and Hespeler, check them out at victorypints.ca. A massive thank you to Victory Pints for all their support over the years.
All right, welcome back, and we are digging into the main course, which is called The Cycles of Hype. So again, just to kind of go back to what I said at the beginning and explain a little bit more, what do we mean? What do I mean when I say the cycles of hype? So I'm going to use an example from movies that is a little bit more recent. I think even if you aren't a fan of these movies, you can relate to it becoming sort of this hype cycle. And I'm going to use actually two examples because they're kind of tied together. One is superhero movies, and then the next thing I'm going to use is multiverse stuff. So these this is are very tied into the same genre, but like we saw the MCU, the Marvel movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe come about, and then we just saw like all these other companies start to try to make their own universe. There was like the Monsterverse that they tried to start with like the Mummy and Tom Cruise, and that like went nowhere. The DC universe is like they're still trying to get that thing going. We saw all these movies sort of say we're going to put like tags at the end of the credits. We're going to start tying these movies together. And it took Marvel doing that and then seeing everyone clamor for it, that suddenly everyone's like, we need a piece of this pie. And we've seen that with now multiverse stuff. It's like Marvel, or I don't know who did it first, but like now it was just like everybody's done this thing where it's like, we're going to bring back this character from like the 70s, like Flash brought back the Flash movie brought back like Michael Keaton as Batman, and like there was the Spider-Man the Spider-Man trilogy, the third movie, bringing back like the previous Spider-Man, and so like I'm using this as an example because what happens, I think, in a lot of these entertainment mediums is something works, and then you have a bunch of marketing executives, you have a bunch of people who want to make profit, make money, and they say we need to do the same thing. We need to jump on this train. Like the people clearly want this, and we think they want it more than what currently exists. So let's also do that thing. And so that's kind of what I mean when I say cycles of hype. Is like I started thinking, since we've been active in the hobby, which is since like 2019, 2020, when we started the channel and started thinking about starting the channel and playing more games, what are these cycles of hype that we've seen emerge that sort of dominated the space, that sort of like someone did something and then all of a sudden everyone's releasing a game like that for a while, or maybe they still are. There's the ones that are still going on. And so that's kind of what I mean. And we're going to dig into it even more as we get into it. But I do want to stress that like we've picked 5 here. And like, it's all up for debate. Like, this is what we're going to talk about, but as we'll get into at the end, we each have another one that we want to sort of pitch that could have been one of the items that we're talking, one of the cycles, or taken over one of the spots that exists in this episode. And you might be listening and say, well, what about this? What about this? And you're not wrong. This is just with the ones that I would say we've noticed were big, sort of, dominating moments in the hobby of board games since we've been in it. And so for each of these, we're going to talk about the highs and the lows, and a high and a low could be a game. It could be like a moment. It doesn't have to be a specific game. It could be something else tied to like that specific cycle, but we're going to talk about those. And we're also going to give our rating of like how we would rate that cycle of hype out of, I don't think we actually determined if it was going to be out of 5 or 10. So I'm open. I was going to say out of 10 just because it gives more flexibility, but if we want to keep it to 5, okay, Carlos nodding, so we'll do 10. So just kind of rating, like how much did we enjoy? Oh, Braden's shaking his head. We're going to have a fight here. But like just rating like how we feel that cycle was for us personally, whether we liked it and we didn't, or how we rated on that scale. So the first thing we're going to jump into though is what makes the cycles of hype that we experience in the board game hobby different than those other mediums that I talked about? Because we're like, I use that as an example, but we're only talking about the board games here. So what differentiates it? What makes it different than, seeing the MCU become sort of something that everyone wanted to copy? And I'll throw one little thing out, and then I'll kind of open the floor to you guys to kind of jump in. But I think that board games, I think it's not that the cycles last a shorter period of time than other mediums, but I think that it kind of, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word it. It's that we've talked a lot about how like profit margins are razor thin in board games. It costs so much to get a board game produced, and like you have to sometimes go to crowdfunding before you like as your entire marketing platform, because otherwise you don't have the funds to be able to do it in the first place. And so I feel like the cycles kind of ramp up quicker, and then in some cases they're either gone quicker because they didn't work, or it's like they just coast for a long time because it almost becomes like it's no longer a cycle. It's like it is a defining change, evolution in the hobby that now everyone is like, well, this is just a thing that exists now. And so it's not, I wouldn't say that that's something that's not in other mediums, but I just find that it's more volatile, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in board games in comparison. I feel like the amount of money that's being thrown around with like films, for instance, you can have like a box office bomb, and a box office bomb still made like, $200 million. It's a bomb because they spent $300 million to make it. That it's when you're dealing with that amount of money. Like I just think when I think of like TV, movies, books, board games, even just those four, board games is by far the smallest medium of all of those. And so that just kind of creates a unique space where yes, we have the same kind of cycles and the same kind of pressures, but it's in this much smaller niche. And I feel like we feel the effects more when that hobby is completely dominated by like one discussion, right? Because it's a niche hobby in the first place. So I'll open it up to you guys. I've talked enough. What do you think is different, Braden?
It's interesting that you had said that it's more volatile, because I actually think it's maybe the opposite. Because in board games, I think we find maybe something comes along where, maybe it's a new mechanism, worker placement, whatever it is, right? And then that gets latched on to or adopted by other games in the future. And I feel like so many more games continue to have that, right? There's such a much longer tail because people are refining, adding to, changing in slight ways, adjusting, applying them in different settings, whatever it is, right? Like those things, there's almost like less or fewer, I don't know, like obviously there are. We're going to get into them here. But I think that there's more maybe iteration because maybe things like crowdfunding give that ability to experiment, right? Whereas if you're in Hollywood and you have those busts, you really need to be making $500+ million for those big movies, right? But maybe one of the next trends is going to be lower budget movies. Who knows? Anyway, that's movies on that side of things.
And I think like it's like the volatility thing, it was more like I think I'm just getting stuck a little bit too on like the example of like cinematic universes. Like how many have failed and they're still like, I think now it's finally dying down, but like this started in like 2014 and it just feels like everyone and their mother was just like, we got to have a cinematic universe, and you see them all fail, and the DC one has failed, like not failed, but not had traction so many times, and they're still trying, and it feels like, yes, maybe it's finally going to end, but it's just like, with how much money is being thrown around, I would have expected that by now they're just like, we're not Marvel. Let's stop trying to be Marvel. And everyone continued to try to be Marvel. Even Marvel tried to be Marvel so much that they tried to tie in their TV shows, and I think killed their own genre a little bit. But anyways, that's another topic. But Carlo, what about you? What do you think about the board game hobby in this regard?
Well, so I think the first thing I want to say, like, I'm going to go back to the definition after, because I feel like we blazed past that a bit quick, but I want to address this kind of like what you're asking about the board game hobby being different, because for a while I was stuck on that, like how different is it? Like the main things that first came to mind were like just the physical size of like just comparing board games to video games, for example, the physical size and weight of the product, right? Like the whether it's wooden components, plastic, cardboard, whatever it is, they're heavy, they take a lot to produce. Obviously very different from like technology, whether we're talking like discs or, different consoles or have games made differently. But even just compared to like, books and DVDs and whatever else, like, and a lot of movies aren't even consumed in DVD form now. A lot of it's just streaming, right? So there's the physical component. There's the environmental impact of like the manufacture. Like a lot of these games are manufactured in China. Tons of them are then, shipped outside, like sold in, North America, Europe, etc., all over the world. Massive environmental impact on these, obviously. I think they also maintain value differently than things like, for example, DVDs, right? DVDs got replaced by Blu-rays. And then when people are like, oh man, it's all about Blu-rays now, like those people probably don't have their Blu-rays anymore. If they do, like they probably, have whatever. They probably watch stuff through streaming now anyways. So like, there's a lot of different things here that it's kind of hard to pin down where the difference comes into play in terms of like how that affects the hype cycles. I would say board gaming is also one of the most niche hobbies, again, just compared to like, shows, movies, books, video games, all that kind of stuff. It is a lot more niche. So a lot of that just makes me think more long-term is where the hype, like these hype cycles that generate, let's say, 50 games with the same mechanism over the span of 5 or 10 years, and then if that hype cycle dies out and in 20 years, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people don't care about these games anymore, like, was it worth mass producing all these games that, like, yeah, in how many years are probably just going to end up in landfills? So like that's I think where I think of it is like, and again, there's people who might be listening to this who, like, I'm not an environmental expert in any way, so to compare like even the environmental impact from one industry or one hobby to the next, like, is not at all, like, I could be speaking in a way people might be hearing this and thinking like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And you're right, I don't know what I'm talking about, but these are my impressions. Like, when you ask me how it's different, these are just the things that come to mind. But I don't know, does any of this resonate with you guys? Like, do you strongly disagree with any of this, or what?
No, I think everything you're saying is valid. Like, it makes sense. And I think, like, in general, just to kind of like even inject a little bit more of my own stance, like, I would say like one of the biggest evolutions in me is like my personality in the last like 2 or 3 years has been like a complete and utter like desire to reject like these things that are sort of pushed on us as like when someone comes up with something unique and really amazing, I think it's almost like, in many ways, you should be honored that other people want to mimic you and to sort of like do the same thing, because it's a testament to how good your idea was. But it's also this like dilution of this unique thing you did to be like, let's essentially mass market it and as many people as possible trying to jump on this fad. It's like we see it all the time now where like in video games, so like a game gets released and super unique, and then within like the next 2 years there's like not only large scale releases that are copying that same style, but like a slew of slop, I would say, all over like all the indie, like the eShops and the stores of like people just like almost like blatantly copy it to the point where you're like, how are they not getting sued? Because they're just like, let's just milk as much money out of this thing that's working as possible. And like I detest that so much now that like I think there's a part of me that I view the board game hobby as sort of an escape from a lot of things. And that's just me personally. I don't mean that I'm putting that pressure on the hobby in general, but like I use it as an escape. So when I see certain things get injected into our hobby or become a part of our hobby that are already present elsewhere, I'm like, I want to be like, get out of here. Like, this is supposed to be a safe space. Like, what are you doing ruining this or whatever? And so when I see like some of the things we're going to talk about, like work, it's like, right, but because they work, that doesn't mean I want to see 200 other designers go and try to do the same thing, right? And I'm exaggerating, but like I think that's kind of where I stand with it, is that like I don't want everything to be a one and done, and I want people to iterate, but I feel like you have to have an idea that takes that and elevates it, takes that and evolves it, takes that and elevates it. And sometimes what I'm seeing is people just being like, well, people clearly want this, so let's just keep doing more of this, without really taking enough time to think about, right, but how are you like really taking it to the next level rather than just taking this opportunity to try to make more money off of this hype cycle or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point too, Carlo, like, is it worth it to see all these different designs? In my mind, I'm envisioning that the designers aren't just reproducing or doing this next thing, right? They are adding to it. They are iterating in some way, right? And we talk about maybe first designers like we did in the appetizer, putting those out there. Are they going to be the most amazing games? Maybe, maybe not. But that experience is also probably valuable that could then lead to something else down the line too, right? So I think, it's obviously a very nuanced thing to talk about and very broad as well. But, for something that isn't making a meaningful change, yeah, maybe it's not the most, enticing or compelling product. But I think where it matters is making that meaningful change, iterating, because, that's just part of it. I think being a human is just making something new and adding maybe your own twist onto it that then maybe sparks another idea, and then it continues to roll downhill as this large snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually you get Brass Birmingham.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to ask you something. Like, well, maybe not so. Like, the distinguish between like publisher or designer making that push into the hype cycle. Like, what does that mean to you in terms of like, yeah, whether it's a designer who's designing games. Again, this kind of goes back to our appetizer, designing games for the hype cycle in mind versus having a publisher basically putting out calls, like whether they're meeting with potential designers saying, hey, we're looking for, like, we want to release 2 roll and write games next year, or we want to release the next worker placement plus deck building game, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, how do you feel about it coming from the publisher versus it coming from the designer? And this is going to circle back to another thing I want to bring it home to before we go on to the actual categories here.
I feel like it's every situation is unique, so it's a nuance, and this isn't going to be a blanket statement. But like in general, I would say when it comes from the designer, I would hope it's coming from a place of, I have a really great idea, and maybe I got inspired by this other thing that came out, because inspiration is like how most, if not all, art is born, right? And so it's okay to be inspired by something that was super unique. If it comes from a publisher or from a marketing department that says, our data suggests that people are really hot on worker placement games right now, so we got to really capitalize on this, and we need you to design a worker placement game. I'm not saying something good can't come of that. I just think that like when something is born out of data analyzing that people want something, like I don't even know exactly the best way to word this, because it's not that like I think anything is inherently wrong with that. That's how so much is like built in our society and stuff. But I think that some people do sort of abuse that, and it's just like they view it as not an opportunity to enhance the hobby, and more as an opportunity to fill their pockets more. They're like, this is really working right now. This is a space where you don't make money very easily, like the board game space, and we think this is somewhere where we can. And again, that might, a great product might come out of that, but I feel I have way more respect when someone is the first to do something, because they didn't have someone saying, like, if anything, they probably had people saying like, we don't know if this is going to work, and they were so confident, or someone was so confident to be able to do it, and then they set the trend, right? They set the hype cycle. And so in many ways, like, that's where my respect lies, is with the people at the start of it, not the ones in the middle at the end trying to sort of like milk the last bits out of it or whatever,
Yeah, and I think it can be sometimes like, I don't want to accuse anyone of doing this, anyone in particular, because like for most publishers this is not the case, but it at times can feel like it's a little bit like bordering on almost like predatory in some ways, like driving these hype cycles. Like part of it is like, a lot of this touches on like FOMO and all kinds of stuff, but like it reminds me a little bit of like the way that social media and like search engine stuff, like your data is used against you these days, and you're shown stuff that you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. It feels a little bit like that. It's like, hey, everyone wants these kinds of games, so let's keep giving them these kinds of games until they're tired of them, and we get data showing they're tired of them, and then let's give them different kinds of, like, it just feels a bit what's the word I'm looking for, like impersonal, even though even though it's a violation of, yes, almost like like
There's something about wanting to do something until no one wants it anymore that really bugs me. And I don't mean no one wants it more, but like everyone's tired of it. It's like, why did we have to have so many superhero movies that now, like, you get to a point where people are like, now did you hear the word superhero fatigue come up a lot? It's like, why couldn't we just, like, why did we need there to be like 6 releases a year? Why couldn't it have just stayed as 2? Because like it's working, right? And I think that's when it starts to bug me. It's like, don't beat it until no one wants it anymore.
Yeah, and when it's a lot of this stuff happened during the pandemic. Like a lot of these hype cycles we're going to talk about either started like during or started a bit before and kind of ran through the pandemic with COVID, where there was like loneliness and isolation were at an all-time high, and people were looking for things to get excited about, and even just being part of an online community, whether that's like the Kickstarter comments page or a Discord server of people talking about this new game that's coming out or these types of games that are being released or whatever. Like connecting online was for some people like all they had, and it just made that sort of like maybe them a little bit more prone to falling victim to the hype cycle in ways that's where again like it can kind of bleed into feeling a bit predatory at times. But
yeah. Okay, so to make sure we have time for all these, I'm going to name all of them, and then we're going to start at the top. And for each one, like I said, we're going to each discuss sort of like our highs and lows and any other points we want to discuss for all of them. But I think it'll help to hone this all in when we actually like are talking about the specific ones we've included here. So the ones we're going to talk about are legacy games having legacy versions, things like that. Roll and write games, trick-taking games, dual versions of popular games or games getting like another version that's a dual version, a two-player version, and then deluxeified / like re-implementation of games where they're re-released either like with a bunch of extra components or just, with a bunch of bells and whistles, anything in that realm. Why don't we start with legacy games? So legacy games, just like I don't know if it's 100% the first legacy game, but Risk Legacy came out in 2011. But I don't necessarily think that like that popularized it. Like I'm not saying that game wasn't popular, but I think Pandemic Legacy is, in my opinion, where this like hype cycle really started. I mean, that was the number one game on BGG for a while. It had 3 different versions, and so I included Pandemic Legacy as like a high for me because one, I played through the whole thing and I loved it, but even more than that, like I feel like it at that time was so unique and it's such what an undertaking and what like an idea to be like, we're gonna take this one of the most popular board games and we're gonna sorry, 1 second, guys. My computer wants to restart, and I don't want it to restart. Remind me tomorrow. Okay, I'm gonna start that again. I just feel that like it basically showed other board games like what this could be, right? So like the reason it even became a hype cycle, in my opinion, was Pandemic Legacy. Like it's kind of due to that, but it wasn't the first one. But that's kind of what I think. But I'm curious to like see if you guys agree, or if there's any other games that kind of stand out to you that you think really like kicked it off. I know that was before our time, but I feel like that seems to be like the natural starting point, in my opinion.
I think the other one I heard of a lot was Seafall, and that one came out, but I don't remember if that was before Pandemic Legacy or after, but I remember that was like around the time where I started getting more into the hobby beyond just playing games, but like, going on Board Game Geek, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube and stuff. I remember Seafall being a game that a lot of people were hyped about and a lot of people were disappointed about, or disappointed with, and that was... Yeah, I think it came soon after Risk Legacy, right? Yeah, but before Pandemic Legacy?
No, after Pandemic Legacy.
Oh, after, okay.
So I had that, even though I didn't play it, I put that on the lows just because of everything I heard. And I feel like that was like when certain things came, not crashing down because legacy games have persisted well after that, but it was almost like a reminder to people that like just having a legacy game doesn't just make it good. Like it still has to be well designed. But yeah, so just to go through my highs: Pandemic Legacy Season 1, Gloomhaven, My City, King's Dilemma, and I included Ticket to Ride Legacy here because I've only played it twice, but that's one where I went in thinking, I think this is going to be another one where I'm just like, why did we need a legacy version of Ticket to Ride? And it's like after 2 plays, I would say I was pleasantly surprised, and it kind of showed me that like there's still room in this genre, but at the same time, I like it is also like an example of the problem, which is like you have a popular game, whether that be Ticket to Ride, Azul, Splendor, whatever, and you just say like, okay, like right now legacy games are popular, so let's do a legacy version of that game, right? And like that's what Ticket to Ride did too. So it's like one that I appreciate so far, but also it's like I'm mad at it for existing, if that makes sense.
That's so interesting. It's like what is the line then? You know what I mean? Like it's so hard to define what that is. And I'm glad that you mentioned My City, because that was definitely going to be one that I mentioned as well, which was by far and away Sarah and I's favorite legacy game for sure. Like, we played, it probably is to this day probably one of our most played games, even though, like, we played through the entire campaign. I think we're literally in the last chapter for My Island as well. Right now, we're so close. And just the fact that not only is it a legacy game, but having the Eternal game there as well for you to play, I think is also a nice aspect to it too. And Seafall, heard a lot. Don't really know what it's about, but I heard a lot of the hype and then kind of what the letdown was from there. I'm trying to think if there are any other legacy games that are kind of on the downside, the downslide, even, if you will.
The downslide.
Trying to think just off the top of my head, and I don't.
I have some, but I'll let Carlo give his highs first, and then
yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah, and just so you guys know, like, for these highs and lows, I've included even certain things that I haven't played, but I'm going to highlight that I haven't played them. It's more so what I've heard or what we've heard in the hobby, just so we're giving as much reach as we can.
Gotcha. Okay, so my high is also going to be My City. I have to say, like, honestly, it's like by a pretty substantial margin ahead of all the other legacy games I've played. I would say, like, if we either didn't have a YouTube channel, or if it was like entirely up to me or whatever, of all the legacy games I've ever played, I think My City is the only one that I would have chosen to see through all the way to the end. And so it's not only like where the actual like game to game each session was awesome, but as a campaign, like, I felt satisfied by the end. It didn't overstay its welcome. Like, that to me has been the biggest thing with, I think, pretty much every single legacy game I've played. I have felt like I wish it ended sooner. And I think there's this kind of like feeling that a lot of designers, or maybe it's the publisher as well, because they're the ones like, pricing the game and like the sales are so important, is I think they feel this pressure to be like, well, if it's only one time, you're only going to play it one time, it's got to be a long game. Like, we've got to make it really worth it. So we got to make this giant box and shovel this content in there, and then it'll be worth $80 or $100 and all this kind of stuff. But, like, most people don't want to play that much of a game unless it's one of their favorites ever. And I think Knizia got it right by just making this one more accessible and being like, yeah, I'm not claiming this is going to be like the best game I've ever designed, but like, if you're looking for something that has this legacy aspect, like, yeah, it's like $30. You can get through it in like a few sessions, and then it's the replayable version after. Like, the Eternal mode is part of what makes this the best one, is that the Eternal game afterwards is actually like one of the best polyomino games you can find. So I feel like it's just the complete package. I would have put Gloomhaven or Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion as the next closest, just because like they're extremely well designed games that I have lots of memories of, especially Gloomhaven, because that one I played as in a group of 4, obviously with you, Dylan, and Corbin and Brad. Whereas Jaws of the Lion I just played through solo, and that one I think I finished the end of it mostly because I knew I wanted to review it for the channel. And then I would say the low would be Charterstone, and that was a pretty easy pick for me. And it's just like, I mean, also I would say just the fact that legacy games are still being made at such a high rate, like the fact that is still happening, I consider like a low as well, like a secondary low, just because I think that they're, yeah, I feel like the ones that are getting made are sort of like, people are losing interest a lot, and I feel like it's kind of like clinging on to the last legs of this kind of like a legacy period. I hope they're kind of dying out, but yeah, Charterstone I just did not like. I felt like it was more of a concept or an idea that felt underdeveloped than an actual proper legacy game.
Yeah, I would almost say that like we're in like late stage legacy games right now. Like we're like, because so the 2 I highlighted that are apparently coming out this year are Forbidden Legacy, which is like Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert is getting a legacy version, and then Game of the Week got previewed, which is Mountain Goats Legacy, is also coming out. 2 games that I like, even if they end up being good just on paper, I don't think they need legacy games. It feels like trying to get something out of brands that are working or that have been successcul. But
I will say the pitch we got from All Play when we were at Canada Plays made Mountain Goats like I was skeptical of Mountain Goats Legacy, but after he talked to us about it, I think his name was Mark, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of sold on Mountain Goats Legacy. I'll try it.
There is also Sail Legacy from All Play as well, which, if the Bits podcast is to be anything trusted with their opinions, no, they talk about it's obviously who is it from All Play? I can't remember his name. Oh my gosh. Joe, thank you, from All Play, talking about Sail Legacy. He is very excited for that game. Obviously, he's got a vested interest in it, but like saying that it is not like any other Legacy game that you have played before, which is interesting, right? We talked about the building and iterating, right? If you're still changing up on the format, hey, I want to see it.
Well, I'm going to throw a couple more out there for new ones real quick. There was Sagrada Legacy was just a few years ago, and I remember, Dylan, you and I were really skeptical of that one, and most of what I've heard, the reception has been pretty disappointing. I think, not say there's nobody, it's not getting trashed, but I think generally most people thought that didn't need to be there. I know Legacy of Mars, the Terraforming Mars one, was announced not too long ago. I don't know if that's going to go through crowdfunding or whatever. I won't be playing that. But I will say there's a good chance. I think we're hoping for a review copy of Regicide Legacy once they have that available. And I am really that's the most I've ever most excited I've been for a Legacy game in quite some time. Mostly because the original Regicide did so much with basically a 52 card basic deck, right? So I have high hopes for it, and what I've heard of it sounds really encouraging.
And then the last thing I'll mention before we move on to the next one is just that this is an interesting one, that when this one bloats, when this is at its peak, it's almost the toughest one because Legacy games demand so much of you, or certain Legacy games where it's we need you to play this over 10 sessions, get this group together 10 times. If that bloats, how many Legacy games can you really own in your collection versus what we're going to talk about next, which is roll and writes? When that bloats, roll and writes, you could have 10 roll and writes in your collection, and there's very little pressure to get very little overhead to get them started. So I just thought that was interesting also with Legacy games. But again, transitioning to roll and writes, is one where this is a genre that's existed since Yahtzee, right? But I feel like when Yahtzee came out, I don't think someone was I'm designing the first roll and write. I'm designing a roll and write. It became more popularized as we went on, and the period I wrote down somewhere, I don't even have it. I think I wrote it down as based on what I saw from Board Game Geek and us is that roll and writes kind of started to pick up steam in 2018, 2019. But we've seen a whole bunch. And so some of the ones that I thought were highest for me, and then I'll throw it to you guys, were Welcome to. Again, sorry. I should say I'm including flip and writes here. So roll and write, flip and write, I'm kind of including in the same genre. Welcome to, Cartographers, Railroad Inc. That's pretty clever, although I have That's Pretty Clever also in the lows because of how many versions now exist of this game. But That's Pretty Clever. A new one, which is kind of was a surprising one to me, the Cascadia Roll and Writes, the Rolling Hills and Rolling Rivers, Hadrian's Wall, the Anarchy, if you consider those as well. So this is a genre that has a lot of really good ones, but it seemed because this is about me. This is my opinion. I don't know for this for sure, but because this is one that doesn't take nearly as much money to develop as a full Legacy game, it's an easy one to sort of look at and say, hey, this is working. Let's do a roll and write version. And that's when I'll get into the lows after, but those are the ones that came to me. So I'm curious. And I would say out of all those, the one that I enjoyed the most is probably That's Pretty Clever, but Welcome to and Cartographers are really close as well.
I am surprised you did not mention the Next Station series, Next Station London.
Oh,
as well.
You know what? You know what's so funny is I used that on Board Game Geek because I was this is my shoe-in, and I used it to go click on the mechanic rolling or flipping or rolling or whatever, and then I forgot to put it down. But absolutely, yeah, the Next Station London games. I've been playing Next Station London with my partner monthly, so it's 100% that's on the list.
Yeah, really, really good. I think the only one that I have to add to here that I have experience with here, and you guys can question whether it is a roll or flip and write. Guild of Merchant Explorers, would that also qualify in this? Because if so, I think it does definitely be there.
That was I
Interesting,
had
yeah.
that one as well because it's basically I think of these games as like a blank and place, and the blank is just you need either dice or cards to randomly generate or to randomly determine where you can place the result of that thing, basically. And Guild of Merchant Explorers could have been a roll and write. They just decided to make it a game with actual maps with cubes that you're putting out on instead.
What about does Marabunta also fit into here, or is that different? Because you are rolling and then you are writing.
I guess like it does. I think I would almost like Marabunta. It feels secondary to the I split you choose, if that
Right.
makes sense. Like even like they're both prominent, but it feels like if I had to be like, what kind of game is that, and I can only pick one thing, I'm saying it's an I split you choose game rather than saying it's a roll or write game.
I would agree. I would agree with that. Similar to like Cartographers is like primarily roll and write, but it's secondary a polyomino game.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
That kind of, I would say. Yeah. So yeah, I'll go with my highs and lows here. So for roll and write, I have to say this is the one category I think where like more than a specific game or two, like if I had to pick a game, it would either be the Guild of Merchant Explorers, Welcome to, or from the Clever series, it would probably be Doppelt So Clever. But I'm also very partial to some of the more basic roll and writes, and I'm going to shout out specifically Quix, which is spelled Qwixx. I don't remember when this was designed, but so Raj introduced me to this. Well, Raj and Hillary introduced us to this like years and years ago. And so my high of roll and write games is that like, so normally I don't love them. Like I'm rarely the one choosing to play them, but I find that there's enough people in my life who I game with who like them that I end up playing them semi-regularly, maybe not as much in the past year or two kind of thing. And I'm always like happy to play them, but I tend to prefer them usually more either solo or with two players rather than at like the higher player counts, especially like the Doppelt So Clever ones where you're waiting for people to just sit there rolling and comboing stuff. But in 2018, I was in Portugal, and I have this vivid memory of this heat wave that lasted a few days where it was like plus 40 Celsius, and we were staying in this third-story apartment with no air conditioning and a broken fan, and anytime we weren't at the beach in the water, we were just sitting around in our bathing suits, snacking on prosciutto-flavored chips, drinking Superbox, playing round after round of Quicks, and like all these like Encore, which like Raj had the Dutch version called Keer op Keer. And so the reason I bring these up, and this is the highs, is because it felt like all the roll and writes after this were like a roll and write, but this, like with this bell and whistle added onto it, or it was a spin-off of like, it's Twilight Inscription, it's Twilight Imperium, but roll and write with 4 sheets. Right? Whereas like the ones that I played on this trip were all the ones that just look like almost a spreadsheet that are just like, there are numbers and colors. You roll the dice, you take the dice of this color, and they go in these things, and it's just like pretty basic, but that's kind of where I got hooked on them, and that was where the peak of my enjoyment with roll and writes came from. And now whenever I start playing one, it's like I can almost taste the things I was eating again in that apartment. Like I get like taken back there. So even though I don't love roll and writes, they're always going to be kind of hold a soft spot in my heart for that. I'm always going to think back to that Bairro Alto sweaty apartment in Lisbon. And then my lows, I'm just going to say the low is just the general aspect of roll and write spin-off versions of other games. So like, what X game : roll and write, or the roll and write game, or whatever.
I wrote here. I'm going to just quickly step in because I wrote a bunch down. So like Lost Cities roll and write, Copenhagen roll and write, Roll for the Galaxy, Trois Dice, Raw and Write, Alhambra roll and write. Like there's all these games that are good games that they just said, okay, so we have this really popular game. Now we do a roll and write version. And this is again just my opinion. I would say if you're going to do a roll and write version, the only way you should do a roll and write version of a game that already exists is if you think you can make it better than the game that already exists. Otherwise, I just feel like, and so like for me, that's why I think I was surprised by Cascadia. I actually like the roll and write version more than original Cascadia, and I'm probably in the minority there. But that's why I think like that one resonates for me. Whereas other ones, it's like if you already have a good game, unless like you have a super long game that you're trying to condense down and then you can make it just as good, it just seems like it's more egregious to me as like being, let's just cash it on the brand that is working. Okay, so one thing I wanted to just before we get into the next one, in my opinion, these first two that we've talked about are either like cycles that have died off or are about to die off. And I don't mean die off as in like we're not going to see legacy games or roll and write games. I mean that like are well past the peak of like their popularity, and now when we see them, they'll be more intentional and they'll be like more because someone has a unique idea rather than trying to cash in on this successful thing. Whereas I would argue that the next three we're going to talk about are like still present and still ongoing is the reason I wanted to kind of like throw that in there.
I think I would agree with that for the first two. Like, even when
Yeah.
there was, like, The Hobbit there and back again, like, I remember thinking, like, like, maybe there hasn't been as many roll and writes lately. Like,
Yeah.
this is a kind of newer take on it. So, yeah, I do think we'll still see them. I think Legacy is dying off more than roll and write, but I think publishers see that financial... that maybe tempted financially by the prospect of producing a big legacy game that's going to, like, you know, no roll and write game is going to end up on the top 10 or 20 on Board Game Geek, but a big legacy game has a shot to make it there. So
Yeah, totally. So next one is trick-taking games, and this is one that I would say. So trick-taking games, like you mentioned earlier, Carl, like this is a genre that is not new in any stretch. Like this goes way back to playing cards with like hearts and spades and all that kind of stuff, and probably earlier than I'm just not even aware of how early it is. So this is more one that like board games took a concept that was like already existed and said like, can we reinvent it in a way, like, and not reinvent it like change the way it functions necessarily, but to some extent yes, but also just like sort of like reintroduce it to a new generation of tabletop gamers. And so what I wanted to suggest here is that I think that the game that started this whole trick-taking fad hype cycle is The Crew. I'm curious what you guys think, but like there's games that came before that, like I think The Fox and the Forest came before that or right around the same time. That was also a really well received and popular one, but it feels to me like The Crew was the turning point. I guess as I would describe it, where like that was the tipping point where people said like, look at this game, look how much people are loving it, and then you know, here we are like now 6 years later, and Lord of the Rings trick-taking game is doing a full trilogy of trick-taking games that are absolutely inspired by The Crew, and it's 6 years later and it's still going strong, right? So I have that as like the most prominent high, but I also have for Fox and the Forest, which I mentioned. I have Arcs in there, ones I haven't played like For Northwood are talked about a lot. Brian Boru is one that I haven't played, but it gets talked about a lot. Cat in the Box, Duel for Cardia, like these are all ones that are even relatively new. And just another little interesting tidbit is when I looked up the top ranked trick-taking games on Board Game Geek, it was like out of the top 10 top ranked ones, I think like all of them, or like 9 out of 10 of them, all came out in the last like 5 years. So like it goes to show like how like not only is it like this hype cycle and a lot are being released, like good ones are being released, right? So yeah, those are the ones I had. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts?
What's really messing me up looking at this list, I'm sorry, I just pulled up the trick-taking list on BGG, is that my favorite things that we played in Hamilton came out in 2015, which was before The Crew and all this other, like that really messes with my brain, because in my head that came after. And but I think I like your point about The Crew. I think it almost gave like this revitalization, or brought more attention, like a spotlight onto trick taking, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah. What if we did this? What if we did this?"
Yeah, because Fox and the Forest came out 3 years before The Crew, and that one was like we got it obviously like when we started the channel, which was a little bit later, but like it was popular and people still like it to this day. But and even a game that came out, like the only game that came out like much earlier in like the top 10 besides Wizard, which is on there, is Skull King, which is 2013. Like again, it's not that these aren't arguably better or great games or whatever, it's just that The Crew really seemed to me, and it was 2019, I think I said 2020, but like I think that really seemed like the tipping point where all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, trick-taking games, and it just became this thing.
And the thing with Skull King is it really is just kind of Wizard, but with added pirates and stuff to it too. So for me to add to this too, I mean, Wizard was on my list. Like I played it with my family. The Crew's on there. Is Scout? I mean, it's not really trick taking. Like it's not. It's shedding, right? And right. It's not. it's not the same necessarily, in my opinion.
It's how I feel about Panda Spin, when people call it a trick-taking game. It's like, it makes me want to make our own list of genres and separate shedding from it, because they just seem slightly different to me, even though I understand why people say they're trick-taking.
Yeah, like they almost all feel more like, I don't even know what you would call them, like card resolution. Like they're games that revolve around rounds where everyone usually plays one card and then the best card wins in some way. Or sometimes everyone's playing multiple cards. You're playing like a meld of some collection of cards. But yeah, there's definitely a bunch that kind of fall under the trick-taking umbrella, one of them being like shedding games like that. So I just wanted to say that quickly, I agree with you, Dylan. Like, the Crew definitely has to be the explosion point. Like, I don't have any other game I would suggest. That's what got me to open my mind more. Like, we tried Fox and the Forest and Duet, and I thought they were both good, but neither one felt like something I would need to request to play again or keep in my own collection or anything. And yeah, the Crew was definitely the one that opened my eyes to, like, this is amazing. I think part of it was those big debrief moments after the round, and just seeing how different it was from anything that I'd really played, and how thinky it was while you were just in complete silence. But yeah, I would say, and then for lows, I don't really have a specific low. I can't say there's any trick-taking game that I've disliked. I would just say usually as good, like, even if I played the best two-player trick-taking game ever, I just think I'm never going to really gravitate towards the two-player ones. Like, Sail I thought was super well-designed. Again, Fox and the Forest was good. I've played, Jekyll versus Hyde on BGA. Like, a bunch of these are good. People have recommended Lone Wolves to us. But I usually, when I'm playing trick-taking, I want 3 minimum, but usually 4 or 5 players.
Yeah, the only one I wrote down for low, and it's one I haven't played, but I just heard not great things about, and we played I did play this one. And again, this is one I didn't dislike. I just I was very underwhelmed, and that was Sail. Sail was one that, like, I didn't dislike it, but I didn't want to, like, go back to it, or I expected more out of it. So it was like the only thing I could come up with for, like, a low. That's when I felt where it was like that. It was almost the point for me where I was like, maybe I'm waning on my desire for trick-taking games. And then there was the Lord of the Rings ones now that have sort of like reinvigorated me, along with like Arcs for like a heavier one.
Fair enough. As far as cooperative too, like Sail, I probably might not go back to either, but I did like it a lot more than Fox and the Forest Duet as far as like a 2-player cooperative trick-taking goes. Brayden, what was your low again? Did you weigh in yet?
I didn't say a low. I mean, I've played this only once. It's Aurum, and I thought it was fine. Like, the Aurum really just introduces like this gold card mechanic to, which is essentially Trump, but you can't lead with it, and you can get them by, I think, playing the lowest card in the trick, and then you get a card of that number to your collection, I believe. It's been a while though. And I like it was fine. It wasn't anything remarkable or, very different, I would say.
I played that one a couple times on BGA and was also a little it felt like a little overcomplicated for what it was.
Okay, what about dual versions of popular games? So in the same way that I had the Crew as sort of popularizing it for trick-taking, the one I wrote down was Seven Wonders Duel. I don't know if that was the first dual version, but like something I want to say about this one specifically is this one is an example of like, or to me it's egregious, where like not only did everyone just say, hey, let's also do 2-player versions of our popular games, they also just said, let's also just use the word duel in the title. And like, there's so many games, if you just search duel on Board Game Geek, where they've just taken it and like, so there's like Wonderland's War Duel, Citadel's Duel, Cosmic Encounter Duel, Imhotep Duel, King of Tokyo Duel, Quack's Duel, King Domino Duel, Dorfromantik the Duel. Like, they didn't even say like, oh, we'll come up with our own name for it. They just said like, duel worked for Seven Wonders, let's just use duel. So that to me I'm getting ahead of myself. That's one of my lows, is like, there's no other more creative way. And some games did, but like this many games just said, let's just use the word duel because it worked for Seven Wonders. Splendor Duel is another one, but
you know what's interesting too is like, I'm realizing that some of these have almost like designers that I would associate with them. And Duel is like, that's Bruno Cathala. He's got his name on half of those. Like, people are just calling him up being like, yo, Bruno, we need a 2-player version, man. We need to put out this Duel version. And like we were talking about trick-taking games, there's like Taiki Shinzawa is like, he's like just known for trick-taking games. Legacy was kind of like Rob Davio. So I think it's interesting to see that. But I think in recent years, people have been kind of not going to Bruno Cathala as much. I don't think that's any indictment on him or anything. I think people are just maybe he started turning down offers. Maybe he's like, listen, I don't want to just be the Duel guy.
Yeah. So just my highs: Seven Wonders Duel, Splendor Duel, and Codenames Duet. Not Duel, but almost Duel, Duet. Those are the three that I think are probably my favorites of like this trend, this hype cycle. And Seven Wonders Duel, and then the subsequent Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle Earth being the highest point there. That's one of my favorite games. So,
yeah, I don't really have much more to add there. Like Seven Wonders Duel, Splendor, yeah, like and honestly, those three were on my list as well. I think they were a lot of fun.
Yeah, I honestly forgot about Splendor Duel. That would probably be my second favorite. I mean, just going off like the fact that Seven Wonders Duel came first, I do like Duel for Middle Earth more than Seven Wonders Duel, but that's just like obviously the Lord of the Rings kind of reskin. But those would probably be the highs. But to be honest, like the Duel, this one has never really done it for me a whole lot. Like I rarely seek out the Duel versions. Like again, like something like Seven Wonders Duel is probably one of the like rare cases where I sought it out and was like, whoa, this is better than the original. As far as low, this was very easy. Azul Duel.
Okay, I'm so glad that was mine too.
What a disappointing game. It was just like Azul is already amazing at 2. Why would you create a version that has way more rules, is a much worse game, and only plays at 2? I just didn't make... Yeah. I mean, I guess the point is that they're not expecting everyone to think it's worse, but to me, it felt like so clunky and yeah.
The reason I had it as my low is not even, I didn't even factor in that I didn't enjoy it, or that I thought like with the gameplay itself. It was just the fact that like, was there a disconnect that they didn't understand they already had a good 2-player Azul with the original? Like Azul, in my opinion, is best at 2. Like it's really good. So to be like, let's do Azul Duel, just... maybe they just did it for the rhyme in the name. Like maybe like I just like, I don't, it just seemed like they didn't understand their own product, or they ran out of like new versions of Azul to do. And they're like, we didn't do a 2-player version. But like, it just seems like someone in that meeting should have been like, well, our original game is kind of Azul Duel. It's great.
Yeah. And probably all the Azuls are probably best at 2.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly.
I think where it's going to get really egregious, like really, really bad, guys, is if Rivals for Catan, which is the 2-player version of Catan, rebrands to Catan Duel.
Yeah. There's just like, yeah, you know what? I would just love to see games start to include an amazing 2-player mode in their 2 to 4-player games, so they don't even have to release a dual version, right? Like, and like I get a lot of these games like change things fundamentally to make it work at 2, but like it's also a bit of an indictment that your original game, you're almost admitting, like, except for Azul, you're admitting that like it either wasn't good at 2, or we didn't include a 2-player mode, or whatever the case is. Again, I don't have a huge problem with dual versions. I have a problem with the use of dual in the names, I think. But I just think that like you're just seeing so many people just like be like, what else can we do with our brand? Let's do a 2-player version. And that's getting frustrating to me. All right, last one here. Deluxeified games. I am going to be a little... I don't even know what the word is here. My brain's not working. But I didn't put any good. I didn't put any highs for me. And it's not because I don't like. It's not because I don't like deluxe components. It's because I don't think that I like anything about this cycle of hype. So the ones that I put as my lows, for instance, is basically the 3 that have been done by Awakened Realms: Castles of Burgundy, Puerto Rico, Concordia. And then I just put crowdfunding because of how many get done in crowdfunding, where they just either release a game that is like has like a deluxe version already as part of the campaign that is like way over the top, or these ones that we're seeing re-released where it's like, hey, here's this really popular game from before, and now we're releasing all these extra components or this new package for whatever. It's not that I understand why people like it, especially if you have an affinity for one of these games, but as someone who loves Castles of Burgundy, I also understand that like that game, like in my opinion, it actually hampers the experience to like have to have all that extra setup and all that extra fiddliness and everything for a game that like is kind of already fiddly with all the little cardboard pieces, and like it does take a bit to set up when you're playing the physical version at the table. So like to add to that is like not something I'm looking for at all. And so maybe I'm just like not the target market for this, but this one just seems like the one that exists specifically to be like how can we make board games that we can price at like $200 $300 and you know, get away with it. But maybe that's my like, you know, jaded take on it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience actually playing deluxeified games. I was trying to reflect on things like what would even qualify for this. Like, I upgraded the bits of Quacks of Quedlinburg. Like, would that fall into this?
See,
like, or does it have to be like this whole new thing, right?
I think that's an entirely different thing. Like, I think when you have a game you love and you're like, you know what, I play this a lot, and there's this one component that I wish exists like this, and someone already made that. I'm going to go upgrade this component. That's completely different because you're taking the onus, and you're either going to like Etsy or going to some other channel to be like, hey, where can I get these components? Or did they make an official upgrade or something? These metal coins, whatever the case may be, versus like saying, hey, anniversary edition, and we're releasing now it's $300, and it comes in a box the size of your chest, and it's just like, I don't know. To me, there's a distinction.
Heck yeah. And right now the name of the game is escaping me, but it's the Rome game with all the miniatures of like the different Roman buildings.
Glory of Rome, is that?
No. Caesar's Empire.
No, not Caesar's Empire. It's not Glory to Rome.
Glory for Rome or something Rome. I know which one you're talking about.
I thought it was Glory something.
Oh, you're talking about the giant foundations of Rome.
Foundations of Rome.
Thank you. My God, it was bothering me so bad.
Yeah, that one was like that. I wanted to play it, but yeah, that was a lot.
I think that was a game that should normally be like $30 or $40 with a basic production, but they were like, no, this is specifically because we're deluxeifying this. It's like 100 or whatever, over 100.
Yeah, which I'm interested to see. Like, I do want to play that version just because, like, it's cool. But yeah, there's also Foundations of Metropolis, which is the same thing, but just not gone to the crazy extent too. So, yeah, like I don't think like the closest game that I think that I've played maybe would be like Nemesis. It's got miniatures, but like that's as far as I got.
Right. And that's like that feels like, I know what you mean, but it doesn't feel like the same as like taking something that already exists and saying like, let's amplify and deluxeify it like crazy. Yeah. What about you, Carlo?
So, yeah, I'm similar to you guys in the sense, like, I don't have a lot of experience with deluxe games or even, like, desire to buy them myself. I think realistically, like, of all the games in my collection right now, the only ones I think of as, like, sort of bordering on deluxe that come to mind there's Rise and Fall, but that was, like, I got the standard version. It's just, like, there was only one, crowdfunding printing, but you guys have played that. Obviously it has those really thick tiles to like even build out the map, and you have like the fact that it's like the game is played on this 3D map where you like lay out the water and then like the plains and the forests and the mountains and whatever, and you put that, and it's like kind of this like multi-layered map. Like, it looks awesome, and the pieces that you're actually moving around are like these glued together like wooden figures that actually look like boats and different animals and stuff. So in that one, I really like it, and it to me adds the experience and is one of the games I'm comfortable with having paid that kind of premium on. Also because they're like, this was the most basic version available for it. Whereas normally, like if there had been a $50 version that didn't have this, I probably would have still just bought the $50 version. Like even when I think of Raw, the reprint from 25th Century Games. Like, people are always saying, like, oh, the Pharaoh edition is amazing, but that was like $150. I got the standard edition for 40 or 50, and it's one of the nicest looking $40 or $50 games I have. Like, I'm so happy with the standard that it's just the difference in cost is tough to justify. So yeah, Rise and Fall is probably the one I'd shout out, other than the two Wolf Designer games I have, which are Guards of Atlantis 2 and Trick Shot, especially because Trick Shot I got with the pre-painted miniatures. But even then, it's like, to me, like, if you were asking me what, like, take a game that I like and how could we deluxify it, I would want to go with wooden components, not plastic. And I hate that deluxification so often just involves giant miniatures, and that's what it ends up being, where, like, I just want high quality chunky wood that feels like it's got some weight to it. It can be screen printed, you can have stickers that you put on, whatever, but that to me is where it should be. And my low is the one Awakened Realms game that you didn't mention, which is Agricola Special Edition. I can't believe you mentioned the other three and you forgot about Agricola.
I had it written down, and for some reason my eyes just must have skipped right over it. Okay,
that one I have here specifically Agricola Special Edition, because that one felt like it was personally targeted at me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not buying
to upset me. That is to upset me, not to make me buy. I.
Okay, so because we've run a little bit long here, we're going to do the sections here, but we're going to do a little bit rapid fire, and then this is something we'll likely expand on the next expansion, I'm sure, because I think these will have some topics. But I'm going to go back through them all, and let's each just give our rating, and let's not really like dive into like explanation why. We'll talk about those, and maybe even like on the Discord and things like that. So out of 10, how would you rate the hype cycle of legacy games, Carlo?
4. It might even be a 3, but I'm going to go with 4 now, just because My City was good, but just as a trend, I don't need any more of them.
Okay, what about you, Braden?
6. It gets a pass.
Okay, I had 7. So, and the 7 is carried a lot by Gloomhaven, but Roll and Rate
just
games,
looking at my other rankings, I probably should have said 5, but I said 4. I'll stick with 4, I guess.
Okay, Roll and Rate games, Carlo.
7. Happy to play them. Don't need to seek them out myself.
Braden.
7.5.
Ooh, if you had said 7, because mine's 7 as well, we would have been triple 7s. Yeah, 7 for me. Trick taking games, Carlo.
8. And this is the highest it's going to get for any of these. 8 is the highest of all these hype cycles.
Yeah, I think 8 as well for me. I think just trick taking has got such a long tail, and there's been a lot that's been done with it already.
Trick taking, for me, I would put an 8 as well. Trick taking, like I think this will become. I'm already starting to discuss it. I was going to say it'll become a 9 at some point, but yeah, 8 for me as well.
You were taking the trick with that, with what you just
said. Dual versions, Carlo.
This is either a 3 or a 4. This is the lowest one for me. I don't need dual versions.
Yeah, it's a 5. But like a weak 5.
I had it as a 6. And then lastly, deluxified games, Carlo.
Like on the lowest end, it's going to be a 1 or a 2. If one day when this Tigris and Euphrates reprint gets announced, like maybe I get the Tigris and Euphrates Deluxe and I'd boost it to an 8. But right now I'm going to have to put it at a 4, I think, or 5.
It's a 1.5 for me, because it just does not appeal to me whatsoever.
Yeah,
but I understand the appeal. I'm just not the audience for
100%. Yeah, that's how I feel too. But I put it as a 3. And then
is there a difference between your rating of playing them versus buying? Never mind. I shouldn't be asking this.
We don't have time.
Okay, so the last thing, and let's do this as sort of like a tease, and we'll commit to elaborating on these as our expansion. The cycles we think could replace or exist alongside the ones we talked about. So let's each name them, and then like if you want to take like 30 seconds to just like talk about it, or you can just say I'm going to save it all. What do you think could or should be on the list? Carlo, let's start with you.
The one that stuck out to me that I put is most similar to Roll and Write around the same era was Polyomino games. So even though there were much older ones like Blockus and like Fitz and stuff like that, ever since Uwe had the era of like Patchwork, Feast for Odin, the Cottage Garden trilogy, etc., it felt like they kind of blew up, and they're still kind of here to stay. It feels like they've tailed off a little bit, but yeah, to me that one felt like a huge, like, there are 10 to 20 Polyomino games every single year for a while, it felt like.
For me, it's going to be IP-based games, so meaning, things like video game IPs, Cyberpunk, or maybe this is just Lord of the Rings games in general. I feel like right now, especially, like we are peaking, or we are going at a rapid ascent still, like going up with how many different IPs are out there. And I think that is very much a hype that is being capitalized on.
Nice. And for me, I'm going to say games having solo modes. And this is something that happened after the pandemic, but I think even more so, I'd say in the last 3 years, it's gotten to the point where people are starting to almost expect or really, really want a game that they're going to buy to say 1 to 4, for instance, instead of 2 to 4, and to include a way for them to play it by themselves. And that's something that even though the games like that existed before, it's only been recently that it started to become this like expectation, I would say. And so it feels like that we're in, or at least we're in, and it like hasn't even peaked yet. And so that's the one I'm going to say as well. And with that all said, this has been a nice meaty veggie episode of the AYCB podcast. I'm going to do it every episode now. Thank you so much for listening. If you don't know, we have a YouTube channel. That's how this all started. You can find us you can even just go to allyoucanboard.com and it'll link right to our YouTube channel, or you can just go to youtube.com/allyoucanboard. We have a Patreon. We have a Discord. You can support us on Patreon. You can join us for discussions on Discord. You can play games with us on Discord as well. If you want to get links to all those, they're in the show notes. And if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/allyoucanboard, I think, or just search All You Can Board on Patreon. Otherwise, this has been episode 13 of the All You Can Board podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you. Nope, you'll hear us again in 2 weeks with time. Episode 14. Sayonara.
Not if we see you first.
I'm never going to get it right. I just need to accept that about myself.
That's right.
I'm just going to start writing the meaty and veggie and whatever stuff into the show notes, into the
Yeah,
script.
but that means you have to say it too.